In this video, we're going to talk about lightweight and alternative rigging methods. So there's a couple different ways that we can add mechanical advantage to our basic slackline systems without actually getting into pulleys and some of the more advanced rigging procedures. One of the benefits of going with these alternative methods is sometimes that you can save a little bit of weight in your pack, but then also, depending on your situation, be a little bit more decisive in which gear you decide to bring. So before really getting into it, I want to introduce one piece of equipment, and this is essentially a webbing pulley. It's got bearings in here that are about 1 inch in diameter, or 1 inch across, so that we can actually use these as a webbing pulley. These are really handy devices for tensioning systems, but then also they have applications within the Longline and Highline world. So one way that these pulleys can be used is to multiply an Ellington, or a primitive system. These can be used with the webbing itself, and you don't have to add any other braking systems or any other additional expensive pulleys. This is actually a super functional device that allows you to get a little bit extra tension within your primitive or Ellington system. So one neat thing about these two pieces of gear, the Genesis and the Ramlock by SlackTech, is that you can actually use these in conjunction with each other to create, essentially an Ellington tensioning device. These slots here are actually designed to accept webbing, so you can actually do a tie-off here similar to a line lock and actually run the webbing through the Ramlock, back around, and then again through the Ramlock, creating a similar friction lock as a primitive system. If additional multiplication is needed, you can always add the webbing pulley or just simple carabiners to give you another 3-to-1 multiplication just for added oomph. One thing we recommend though is when you do bring your webbing to tension is to go ahead and loop your webbing around the Genesis and the Ramlock multiple times just to create an extra solid support system for the two devices. Another alternative rigging method, and this is really applicable in the world of lightweight highline rigging, is the Thomas Buckingham method. This method is really intended for low tension slack lines, but essentially what it uses is a combination of a web lock, a standard style web lock, line grip, and a webbing pulley to create a friction system through the actual web lock. Now this is a pretty slick system, but again you have to make sure that you use it on low tension slack lines, because if you really start cranking down on it, you can actually abrade your webbing pretty significantly. So again, this is a lightweight method used for low tension slack lines. So an additional method that we want to talk about, and this doesn't actually pertain to tensioning a slack line, but it actually has to do with the de-rigging procedures of the slack line. We've developed what's called a soft release, which is essentially taking, we could use this for example, a rigging plate and a Ramlock, essentially taking multiple wraps around the two devices, essentially looping it on top of itself at a minimum of about 5 times. Depending on how long your slack line is, will kind of give you a sense of how long you want that piece of webbing to be. But essentially what it does is once your line's brought up to tension and all these wraps are completed and then tied off to a point, once you're ready to detension, you can untie that knot. And because of all the friction that's bound up on webbing on top of webbing on top of webbing, it actually creates for a very controlled release. So you can actually slowly start taking out loops of webbing, and you'll see the Ramlock or the webbing anchor actually extend out further and further, decreasing the overall line tension and allowing you to break down your system.